Tales of the Incandescent, Episode 3 of the audiobook format series. Oh wow, how exciting. Yep, Illumination number 3. He was number 1. In a world where life revolves around a giant magical jar that mysteriously fills each night with life-giving oils, two young boys embark on a daring adventure. This is the story of their race to uncover the secret behind their secluded village's great and obscure blessing. As the bright light fades, the scene materializes in the town square on a sunny day. At the center stands a giant, half-empty jar of butter, a focal point of this classical fantasy village. A line of villagers, each holding empty jars, stretches out before it. Overseeing the distribution is a man in a blue constable uniform, standing at a tap located at the bottom of the jar. "Butter, get in line," the uniformed man calls out. "Don't miss daily rations of the life-giving oil of the giant jar." Suddenly, two 10-year-old boys, Jack and Ben, burst through the line, shoving folks aside. People are startled by their reckless behavior. "I'm gonna win again," Jack shouts gleefully. "You always win, Jack," Ben replies, struggling to keep up. Jack, brimming with confidence, declares, "That's because I'm number 1. The man in uniform, clearly irritated, shakes his fist in the air. "You kids leave people alone, or I'll give you the whoopin' your parents should be giving ya." The villagers in line collectively sigh at the commotion. The scene shifts to an alleyway where the boys stop running to catch their breath. Ben, frustration evident in his voice, says, "I'm sick of you always being number 1, Jack." "Then start beating me," Jack retorts, his competitive spirit undiminished. Ben suggests a race home before dark, but Jack has other ideas. He's been pondering something for days. Looking down the alley toward the giant jar, still visible in the distance, Jack reveals his plan. "I don't understand why nobody is allowed to know how the giant jar gets filled at night." "I want to know." Jack's eyes sparkle with mischief. "So, whoever can find out how it gets filled first is the new number 1. Deal?" Ben, hesitant, asks how they'll get out after dark. Jack confidently assures him they'll simply sneak out. But Ben's nervousness is palpable. "My dad says that if anyone from the village ever did anything bad to the jar, the blessing might go away, and we'd have to learn to agriculture," he explains, clearly worried. Jack dismisses Ben's concerns, accusing him of being a chicken. Ben, defensive, insists he doesn't want to learn agriculture, not even knowing what it is. Jack, however, is determined to solve the mystery of the jar. Ben brings up a rumor from school. Terry says that gargoyles from the mountains fly in each night and fill it, and if they see any little kids or anybody in town, they'll eat their eyes out. Undeterred, Jack declares, "I don't care what Terry from school says. I don't believe anything until I see it for myself with my own 2 eyes." As night falls, we find Jack creeping up to Ben's house window. Inside, Ben's parents are scolding him. "This reckless behavior all started when you started hanging around that Jack kid," Ben's mom exclaims. His father chimes in, expressing disbelief that his son would try to break their sacred town rules. Ben tries to defend himself, explaining they just wanted to see how the jar gets filled. His mother warns, "Some blessings are better left unknown, son. You never would have asked these questions before you started hanging around with that Jack boy." Outside, Jack snickers. "Well, that's probably true. Sorry, Benny, old buddy. Looks like I'm still number 1. He creeps away, leaving Ben to face his parents' disappointment. Later that night, in the empty and dark town square, Jack sneaks towards the giant empty jar. He hides behind some barrels in an open stable, keeping a watchful eye on his surroundings and the jar. Suddenly, the trees around the village start to shake. A giant shadow casts over the jar, and Jack's face contorts with terror as his jaw drops and eyes widen. "What the heck?" he mutters in disbelief. An acne-covered teenage giant rises above the trees, yawning and stretching its long arms into the air. It steps into the town square and picks up the giant empty jar. To Jack's horror and disgust, the giant lifts the jar to its face and starts popping its pimples into it. Thick, buttery oil splashes into the jar, sloshing around at the bottom as zit after zit dumps and sprays in more. The giant moans with pleasure and relief while Jack, still hidden in shadow, gags and dry heaves at the revolting sight. The next day, we return to the town square. The jar is now full of butter, and villagers line up with their empty jars. Ben stands in line with his parents, spotting Jack behind him. Jack looks sick and wobbly, barely holding onto his jar. Ben runs to Jack, ignoring his mother's call to come back. Jack's face is green with nausea. Ben, oblivious to Jack's state, announces, "Jack, I got caught. My parents say I can't play with you anymore." Jack looks at Ben, struggling to hold back his vomit. Concerned, Ben asks, "Jack, are you okay?" Unable to contain it any longer, Jack drops his jar. It smashes on the ground as he begins to vomit violently. Everyone turns to look at the spectacle. As Jack finishes, vomit still on his chin, he looks up at the crowd, the jar, and then at Ben. With a mix of defeat and relief in his voice, Jack says, "Ben, I want you to be number one next time." And so ends the tale of Jack's ill-fated quest to uncover the village's butter blessing, leaving us to ponder the age-old wisdom. Sometimes ignorance truly is bliss.